Something dark is unfolding across the luxury fashion landscape. Brands that once dominated culture, the ones that controlled red carpets, crashed websites with every drop, and made waiting lists feel like status symbols, are now facing a reality they never imagined possible. Empty stores, unsold inventory, desperate discounts. I am talking about discounts of 70%, 80%, and even sometimes 90%. They are practically giving these items away at this point. Forget those Instagram reels you see and the smiling celebrity endorsements. Behind them, entire empires are quietly crumbling. We're talking about names, brands your favorite celebrities wore on that red card event. Labels that shaped entire aesthetics and defined what luxury meant to an entire generation. But the market doesn't care about pedigree. It has shifted violently. Consumer trust has evaporated. And what once sold out in minutes now sits gathering dust in warehouses. So, which of these brands are in trouble? Today, we're counting down 9 famous luxury brands that are slipping into decline quietly or spectacularly for different reasons. Let's begin. Starting with number 9, Balenciaga. For nearly a decade, Balenciaga wasn't just a luxury brand, it was the cultural oxygen of modern fashion. Every influencer craved it, every celebrity endorsed it, every trend seemed to originate from their runway. But in late 2022, everything detonated. A controversy erupted across the internet, and it was absolutely devastating for Balenciaga. Suddenly, Balenciaga wasn't the house of cool anymore. It became the center of one of the most damaging controversies in luxury fashion history. And while some brands can shake off bad press, Balenciaga faced something far more dangerous: a permanent credibility wound. Even today, nearly 3 years later, the damage lingers. Whenever Balenciaga posts a new campaign, the comment section becomes a battlefield. Whenever they announce a new drop, someone revives the old allegations. The brand is fighting the internet's memory, which almost never forgets and never forgives. But the reputational hit wasn't the only problem. Behind the scenes, analysts noticed something else: a dramatic cooling of consumer interest that went beyond moral outrage. Search volumes plummeted. Resale demand weakened significantly. Flagship stores that once had lines around the block became noticeably quieter. And in several key markets, inventory began sitting longer than usual. An unthinkable shift for a brand that once couldn't keep anything in stock. The numbers tell a brutal story. According to recent e-commerce data, revenue experienced a 21% decline over a 3-month period in early 2025. Parent company Kering reported that its Other Houses division, which includes Balenciaga, saw sales drop of 8% in 2024, with operating profit contracting dramatically. In 2023 alone, Balenciaga's revenue dropped from over 1.39 billion euros to nearly 1.17 billion euros. Operating profit collapsed from 299.65 million euros to approximately 44.93 million euros. Equity plunged from 359 million euros to just 81 million euros. These aren't small corrections. This is a brand hemorrhaging value. Prices kept rising, consumers were pulling back, and Gen Z, the brand's most powerful engine, moved on. And here's the uncomfortable truth about luxury. Relevance is everything, and trust is the currency that keeps relevance alive. The moment Balenciaga's trust shattered, the foundation cracked. Today, the brand exists in a strange limbo. Not dead, not cancelled, not forgotten, but undeniably weakened, like a boxer still standing, but unable to throw punches with the same force. Their shows are still packed with celebrities. Their pieces still circulate online. Creative director Demna is still considered one of the most influential designers of his generation. But the brand's aura has been pierced. And in luxury, once the spell breaks, it's almost impossible to restore. You can't manufacture mystique. You can only lose it. But Balenciaga isn't the only brand facing a reputation crisis. This next giant suffered a blow no one expected, and it proved visionaries can't be replaced. And I am talking about number 8, Off-White. Off-White wasn't just a fashion label. It was Virgil Abloh's language and visual signature. It was a brand built on the idea of controlled chaos, industrial iconography, and youth culture. For years, Off-White was untouchable. Their drops sold out instantly as their iconic diagonal stripes became as recognizable as any luxury logo. But then, Virgil Abloh passed away in November 2021. Off-White continued releasing collections under new creative leadership, first under Design Studios, then under stylist Ib Kamara. Retail partners continued carrying the line. The infrastructure remained intact. But something changed. It was subtle at first, then it became painfully obvious. The brand's identity was all over the place, and they stopped telling stories through their products, and the once electric buzz around drops began dimming. In a brutally competitive street luxury market where hype is currency, that loss of momentum is fatal. The financial reality became impossible to ignore. Retailers that once begged for allocations began reducing orders. Resale prices, once sky-high and climbing, flattened and then declined. Hype cycles that used to build for months cooled to mild interest within weeks. Meanwhile, the broader fashion landscape shifted toward quiet luxury, and in that world, where big prints, quotation marks, and industrial belts felt increasingly out of place, Off-White wasn't just fighting internal transition. It was fighting a changing world that had moved past the aesthetic Virgil pioneered. And then came the brutal, ultimate admission of defeat. In September 2024, LVMH, the luxury conglomerate that had acquired 60% of Off-White in 2021, sold the brand to Blue Star Alliance, a New York-based brand management company known for managing distressed brands like Hurley, Scotch, and Soda, and BB. Financial documents from LVMH don't break out Off-White's exact performance, but the sale itself speaks volumes. You don't sell a thriving asset, you sell a liability. Off-White's new CEO, Cristiano Fagnani, admitted in 2023 that the brand was in a critical situation and needed to reset to return to its roots. He even acknowledged that Virgil's move to Louis Vuitton had been good for LVMH, but terrible for Off-White, putting the brand out of touch with its customer base. Off-White was never a luxury brand, and that's consistent with the Virgil era, Fagnani said. It's about cultural value over luxury craft. Does this look like they have an idea what this brand is anymore? Influencers once obsessed with Off-White have largely moved on. TikTok, once a machine for industrial belt outfit videos, rarely features the brand anymore. And for the first time since its creation, Off-White feels frozen. Suspended in a moment, it can't move past. The question now is simple. Can Off-White evolve without betraying Virgil's vision? Or will it slowly drift into the same quiet decline that has swallowed so many culturally explosive brands before it? The Blue Star acquisition suggests the industry has already made its choice. But Off-White isn't the only brand struggling with identity after losing its founder. Another designer label, once seen as the prince of downtown New York fashion, is facing challenges of its own, and this time, the damage is self-inflicted. That said, let's talk about number 7, Alexander Wang. If you thought Balenciaga was scandalous, meet the crowned prince of scandals. For years, Alexander Wang was the crowned prince of downtown New York fashion. But starting in late 2020 and escalating into early 2021, everything changed when allegations surfaced across social media. Not whispers, not rumors, but direct accusations posted publicly for the world to see. Wang was accused of sexual assault. It started with British model Owen Mooney, who alleged on TikTok that Wang had groped him at a New York City nightclub in 2017. The video went viral instantly, and within days, others came forward with similar stories, accounts of drugging, non-consensual touching, and predatory behavior at lavish after-parties. Industry watchdog accounts like Diet Prada and Shit Model Management amplified the voices. Celebrities distanced themselves. Major influencers who once championed the brand stopped wearing it entirely. Wang initially denied everything, releasing a statement calling the allegations baseless and grotesquely false. But the pressure mounted. In March 2021, after meeting with his accusers and their attorney Lisa Bloom, Wang issued a different statement, one of regret. "I have listened carefully to what they had to say," Wang wrote on Instagram. "While we disagree on some of the details of these personal interactions, I will set a better example. I regret acting in a way that caused them pain. It was an apology that admitted nothing while acknowledging everything. And while Wang denied the allegations, he later reached private settlements. However, the damage was already done. The brand's cultural momentum imploded. Stockists reduced presence. Media coverage cooled. Major influencers, once loyal, stopped wearing the brand. Entire online communities placed the name Alexander Wang in a category many consumers won't touch: the cancelled pile. Wang lost over 100,000 Instagram followers almost immediately. Comments remain limited on his posts to avoid the flood of hate and death threats that poured in during the height of the scandal. But reputation wasn't the only issue. The fashion world moved on. A new wave of designers captured attention. New York's aesthetic shifted. The Y2K revival eclipsed Wang's original minimalist leather DNA, making his once iconic party boy image feel dated and uncomfortable. Wang attempted a comeback in 2022 with a flashy Los Angeles runway show called Fortune City, complete with a night market featuring Asian American vendors and a collection heavy on denim and leather. But the event was met with immediate backlash. Critics called it tone-deaf, stereotypical, and opportunistic. Diet Prada questioned whether Wang even deserved to show again. And here's the strangest twist. Despite everything, the business hasn't completely collapsed. According to sources close to the company, Alexander Wang still generates over $200 million in annual sales. Largely due to strong performance in China, where the scandal appears to have had minimal impact on brand perception. But in Western markets, the brand sits in a place between commercial survival and cultural exile. While some designer brands are suffering because of scandals, others are struggling because the entire market shifted beneath their feet. And brand number 6? This one's fighting a war on multiple fronts: financial pressure, inventory nightmares, and a customer base that simply aged out. This brings us to number 6, Fossil. For decades, Fossil was a modern classic. Not ultra-luxury or fast fashion, but it was a brand that lived comfortably in that middle zone. Good leather bags, stylish watches, and dependable jewelry. It was reliable, accessible, represented practical sophistication, and quietly profitable. The kind of brand your mom trusted and your older sister thought was cool in 2012. Keyword 2012. In 2024 and 2025, Fossil's world changed in ways that threaten its very identity. In its 2024 full year, Fossil reported net sales of $1.1 billion, down 18.9% from 2023. That drop wasn't isolated to one product line. It was across the board. Leather goods, including handbags, declined by 30%. Traditional watches dropped by 14%, and jewelry slipped too. In Q1 2025, net sales dropped another 8.5% on a constant currency basis, with direct-to-consumer retail collapsing 24%. Meanwhile, Fossil is drowning in debt. Total debt stood at $179 million as of mid-2025, while cash reserves hovered around $110.6 million. That's not a comfortable cushion. That's a company living paycheck to paycheck. And in October 2025, Fossil's share price plunged approximately by 40% after the company extended a debt exchange offer, a desperate move that revealed just how urgent their financial situation had become. But Fossil isn't going down without a fight. They've announced a bold turnaround plan. They'll close around 50 stores, cutting costs aggressively, and transitioning some international markets to a distributor model. The bet is that these cuts can generate $100 million in savings in 2025. They're also completely dropping smartwatches, the very category they once leaned on, believing that cost savings and margin discipline will outweigh lost revenue in the long term. So, how's this plan working out for them? They've improved their margin structure. In Q1 2025, gross margin jumped to 61.3%. This looks encouraging, but danger signs are everywhere. Their direct-to-consumer channel continues bleeding customers at an alarming rate, and they're restructuring their entire capital structure with debt refinancing, a move that signals long-term concern, not short-term optimization. Here's the brutal truth. Fossil is caught in a paradox. It's cutting to survive. But in doing so, it's cutting itself off from the brand strength it once had. By trying to cut costs, Fossil has reduced its reach. Customers who once saw Fossil as stylish but accessible may now see it as just another shrinking label desperate to stay relevant in a world that's moved on. The deeper issue is generational. Fossil simply isn't resonating with younger buyers. Gen Z wants modern, minimal, or luxury light aesthetics brands like Quayana, Mansour Gavriel, or even vintage Coach. Fossil's classic, earthy vibe feels dated. Meanwhile, older, loyal customers are aging out of trend-driven purchases. So, their new customer base? It never showed up. And that's why Fossil sits at number 6. It is not dead yet, but it's gasping now, slashing prices, closing stores, and hoping that financial discipline can somehow compensate for cultural irrelevance. But will this be enough? Because as it looks, Fossil is about to become a fossil. Fossil isn't alone in fighting a losing battle against time. Another brand, once LVMH's bridge between street style and high fashion, might be running out of runway entirely, and the whispers of a sale suggest the luxury giant has already given up. This brings us to number 5, Marc Jacobs. Marc Jacobs is a name that used to carry weight. It was LVMH's bridge between street style and high fashion. For years, Marc Jacobs represented the perfect balance of designer credibility with commercial appeal. Today, however, that balance is collapsing. And the biggest sign? In mid-2025, major reports revealed that LVMH is actively considering selling Marc Jacobs, with potential buyers including Authentic Brands Group, WHP Global, and Blue Star Alliance, the same company that just acquired Off-White. The rumored deal is valued around $1 billion, a signal that LVMH may no longer see Marc Jacobs as central to its luxury future. Some analysts call this portfolio optimization, which means they're shedding brands with declining momentum to focus on higher-margin powerhouses like Louis Vuitton and Dior. Things haven't been easy for LVMH's fashion and leather goods division, which includes Marc Jacobs. In Q2 2025, that division's organic sales fell 9%, a steep drop for a group that built its empire on relentless growth. That suggests LVMH is feeling real pressure across its brand portfolio, and mid-tier names like Marc Jacobs are first on the chopping block. Looks like Marc Jacobs would suffer from its brand's identity crisis. Its pursuit of being a balanced brand has become an Achilles heel. On one side, its haute couture roots don't scale. On the other, its accessible pieces don't justify ultra-luxury pricing in a cooling market where consumers are scrutinizing every purchase. So, its retail performance continues to struggle. Fashion insiders note that LVMH's willingness to sell Marc Jacobs may be tied to people not buying it unless it's on sale. Its brand sentiment is disappearing faster than Harry Houdini. Online, loyal customers ask if Marc Jacobs is running out of ideas, and beauty fans still mourn the loss of Marc Jacobs' iconic cosmetic lines, which were discontinued years ago. Some speculate the brand could make a comeback in beauty, but without that, the fashion house alone may not be enough to carry the label forward. What would LVMH do? Selling Marc Jacobs could free up capital for acquisitions and investments in higher-performing brands. But at what cost? If the brand leaves, LVMH loses a piece of its accessible luxury, which is the entry-level gateway that brings younger consumers into the LVMH ecosystem before they graduate to Louis Vuitton. But it may require continued investment in a division that no longer fits LVMH's pivot toward heritage-driven prestige and ultra-luxury positioning. And while Marc Jacobs dances on the edge of destruction, the next brand on our list is facing a debt crisis so severe that restructuring talks have already begun, and customers are reporting quality collapse in real time. So, let's talk about number 4, Furla. Furla is not a household name in the ultra-luxury world, but in the accessible Italian luxury niche of handbags, wallets, small leather goods. It once represented quiet sophistication, sleek design, high-quality leather, and heritage roots from Bologna. Now, though, that heritage is under serious strain. In August 2024, Furla began formal debt restructuring talks with its lenders for its €154 million debt. Sources told Bloomberg that the Furlanetto family,
owners of Furla is injecting around 25 million euros of fresh funding
to stabilize operations and keep the brand afloat. But the Furla Netto problems don't stop at the balance sheet. Furla's digital presence is collapsing alongside its traditional stores. According to Grip's intelligence data, Furla.com has seen approximately an 18% decline in revenue over recent months. In September 2025, their average order value, AOV, was tracked at $300 to $325. While that AOV seems solid on the surface, the drop in conversion rates and traffic suggests weakening online demand, especially concerning for a brand leaning heavily on both wholesale partnerships and direct e-commerce to survive. And then there's the quality issue. In handbag communities across Reddit, Purse Forum, and YouTube, longtime Furla customers have voiced growing disappointment. They have complained about thinner leather, synthetic materials appearing in newer lines, fading durability that makes bags feel cheap within months of purchase. Others report outright product failures. They have talked about clasps breaking after minimal use, bags wearing through quickly, stitching unraveling, hardware tarnishing. Some customers have even received used items sold as new. This is a devastating blow to a brand built on Italian craftsmanship. And because of this, the brand is in a vicious cycle because no one is buying it any longer. So, the brand is trying out sales, and I mean constant, relentless, and desperate sales. Furla bags appear 60%, 70%, and sometimes 80% off, not as seasonal promotions, but as standard operating procedure. The problem is, when a brand that once commanded premium pricing is perpetually on sale, customers stop seeing value. They start seeing desperation, and that's a death sentence. While Furla fights for its financial life, another brand with a very different playbook is quietly generating record profit. But don't be fooled. This success story comes with risks that could unravel everything. Number 3. All Saints. All Saints. The East London grunge stalwart, known for distressed leather jackets, moody aesthetics, and a rock and roll edge, has a roller coaster past. But to many observers' surprise, it's not dying. It's changing how it makes money, and that shift might be the most dangerous gamble of all. For the fiscal year ending in February 2025, All Saints reported group revenue of £441.3 million, down 4% year over year. On the surface, that looks like decline, but here's the twist. Profit before tax soared to £28.2 million, and after-tax profit almost doubled to £18.9 million. So, how are they losing revenue each year and still managing to have explosive profit? This is the All Saints paradox. They're making more money by selling less. How? Margin, discipline. All Saints deliberately cut back on heavy promotions. Instead of chasing volume through discounts, they refocused on higher-margin full-price sales. They reduced markdowns, launched seasons earlier to capture full-price demand, and optimized inventory to minimize waste. All Saints also expanded non-retail channels aggressively. Wholesale, licensing, and franchising performed strongly, diversifying revenue streams beyond physical stores. And they're innovating. They even launched a children's line. That's not all. They are even doing men's tailoring, fragrance, underwear, and eyewear.
To support this transformation, All Saints extended its £55 million revolving credit facility with Wells Fargo Capital Finance until September 2030,
giving them breathing room to execute long-term without constant refinancing pressure. They're also investing in logistics. They opened a new third-party European distribution center in the Netherlands to improve wholesale and concession reach across the continent. Leadership changes signal renewed creative direction. Aaron Esch was appointed Chief Creative Officer effective November 2025, tasked with refreshing All Saints' aesthetic for a new generation. On paper, this looks like a success story. A brand that avoided the discount trap, sharpened its identity, and delivered record profit, despite lower revenue. But there's enormous risk beneath the surface. The 4% revenue drop suggests that not all of All Saints customers bought into the new, more disciplined model. Some walked away when discounts disappeared. Others found the full-price positioning too expensive for what All Saints offers. Their margin play depends heavily on avoiding discounts, a strategy that could backfire instantly if the market turns or consumers become more value-sensitive during an economic downturn. One bad season, one inventory miscalculation, and All Saints could be forced back into the discount cycle they just escaped. Expanding into new categories, children's wear, fragrance, eyewear, is capital-intensive. Failures in those lines could erode margins quickly, wiping out the gains from their disciplined approach elsewhere. And here's the uncomfortable question. Is All Saints genuinely growing its brand, or is it simply extracting more profit from a shrinking customer base? Selling less and making more works beautifully until you run out of customers willing to pay full price. And once you've trained your audience to expect discounts, removing them doesn't expand your reach. It contracts it. Next, we're diving into brand number 2, a once iconic name in American luxury that's now fighting macro forces beyond its control, including tariffs that could obliterate its entire business model. Number 2, DKNY. DKNY is a name synonymous with New York energy. It's sleek, modern, and city chic. You know what I am talking about. For decades, its bags, apparel, and accessories represented the bridge between high fashion and approachable luxury.
Carrying a DKNY bag in the 90s and early 2000s
meant you understood style without needing to flaunt wealth. It was aspirational elegance for real people living real lives in real cities. But today, DKNY's parent company, G3 Apparel Group, is signaling real trouble, the kind that could sink the brand entirely. In June 2025, G3 Apparel issued
a warning that U.S. import tariffs could cost them approximately $135 million,
largely affecting DKNY and other owned brands. Because of this, they withdrew their fiscal 2026 outlook for net income. Companies only do this when they have no idea what's coming, and when the future is so uncertain that providing projections would be misleading or catastrophic.
They managed to sell about $3.18 billion worth of clothes and bags in 2024.
That's massive, and it was more sales than they had the year before. The best part? They didn't just sell a lot, they got very good at keeping the money they made. Their profit hit a record high of $4.42 per share. That means they were running the business efficiently, and their plan to focus on their own popular brands like DKNY and Karl Lagerfeld was working perfectly. They were set up for an even better year ahead. On the surface, that looks stable. But dig deeper, and the cracks appear. G3's wholesale segment is under strain, and they are relying more heavily on owned brands like DKNY, Karl Lagerfeld, and Donna Karan. Also, their licensed Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger sales are declining. So the pressure is on DKNY to deliver. If they don't deliver, there's no safety net. G3's entire owned brand strategy collapses. And now, tariffs threaten to raise production costs dramatically. DKNY's supply chain, like most mid-luxury brands, relies heavily on overseas manufacturing in China, Vietnam, Bangladesh. Although things are calmer at the moment. However, if the tariffs come back, DKNY faces an impossible choice. Absorb the costs and destroy margins, or pass them to consumers and watch sales evaporate. Neither option is survivable long-term. There's also the problem of brand identity. DKNY was once synonymous with aspirational practicality. The brand for women who wanted to look polished without trying too hard. But in 2025, that positioning feels unclear. The minimalist wave pushed DKNY's aesthetic to the side. Quiet luxury made DKNY's logo-forward designs feel dated, and younger consumers gravitating toward brands like the Row, Kite, or even Zara don't see DKNY as relevant. DKNY's decline isn't dramatic in the way a bankrupt brand collapses overnight. It's an ongoing pressure test. But for now, DKNY still has an escape route, but there is a problem. It needs time. And time is the one resource it is running out of. And while DKNY fights forces beyond its control, the brand in our final spot is battling something more threatening. It is a high street giant that fell from grace so dramatically, so completely, that its collapse feels less like business failure and more like cultural extinction. Number 1. Ted Baker. Ted Baker was once the dandy of British fashion. Its floral prints, witty slogans, impeccable tailoring, and flair for the whimsical made every piece feel like it had a story. And it did have a story. Walking into a Ted Baker store felt like stepping into a British sitcom where everyone was well-dressed and in on the joke. Today, the joke is on them. In March 2024, the UK retail arm of Ted Baker, operating under the name No Ordinary Designer, label entered administration, the British equivalent of bankruptcy. By April 2024, administrators announced closures of 11 stores by April 19, affecting around 120 store jobs, plus 25 head office roles. An additional 4 stores were also closed following landlord notices, adding approximately 100 more redundancies. Approximately 245 jobs have been lost, a dramatic contraction for a brand that once had over 500 stores worldwide. But the collapse didn't happen overnight. Ted Baker's fall has been years in the making, with warning signs appearing as early as 2019. That year, an accounting scandal detonated.
The brand admitted it had overstated profits by approximately £58 million over 2 years.
A massive financial fraud that destroyed investor confidence overnight. Founder Ray Kelvin, who had built the brand's quirky personality, was forced to resign amid allegations of inappropriate workplace behavior, including forced hugging of staff. The double blow, financial misconduct, and founder scandal shattered Ted Baker's reputation. Customers began losing trust. Leadership panicked. And suddenly, Ted Baker wasn't competing for fashion relevance. It was fighting for basic survival. Sales declined steadily. Retail traffic dropped. Brand identity crumbled. By 2022, the company was acquired by Authentic Brands Group, ABG,
in a £211 million deal.
A fraction of Ted Baker's former valuation. ABG is a brand management company that owns intellectual property for distressed brands like Reebok, Brooks Brothers, and Forever 21. They don't operate stores. They license names to partners who handle retail. It's a business model built on extracting value from fading brands, and Ted Baker became another asset in their portfolio. But ABG's strategy failed spectacularly. They were still recording losses after getting retail operating partners. Unfortunately for them, by early 2024, the partnerships collapsed and the administration process got triggered. And now ABG is reportedly searching for a new operating partner for both online and European retail. A clear sign they don't believe current operations are sustainable or even salvageable. The financial reality is brutal. According to joint administrators, many of the closed stores were unprofitable, even with significant rent reductions. Discounting became Ted Baker's final desperate move. Insider reports and consumer accounts highlight massive clearance sales. Reddit users documented 50% to 75% discounts across stores and online, even before complete shutdowns. Some longtime fans expressed concern online. They said the brand's identity, once premium, was being diluted through relentless discounting, heavy markdowns, and reduced retail presence. When a brand that once charged premium prices is perpetually marked down 70% or more, consumers aren't as attracted. They don't see the deals that the brand wants them to see. Ted Baker's collapse is not crashing in a flashy, headline-grabbing way. It's a high-street tragedy written in phased store closures, job cuts, and quiet retreats from core markets. If ABG fails to find a strong partner who can authentically revive the brand's identity, Ted Baker's story could become a cautionary tale about how even the most charming brands can vanish when they lose touch with who they were and why anyone cared in the first place. And that's why Ted Baker sits at number 1. It is the most complete, the most tragic, and the most believable luxury light collapse we're witnessing in real time. And there you have it. 9 luxury and luxury light brands that are slipping, struggling, or desperately reinventing themselves as the world shifts beneath their feet. Which of these brands do you think will make a comeback, and which ones are done? Have you noticed these brands struggling in your local stores? Or have you scored insane deals on luxury pieces during these desperate clearance events? Drop a comment below. Hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive into the fashion industry's most dramatic shifts, scandals, and collapses. Because in fashion, nothing is permanent. Not success, not status, and definitely not survival.